Hey guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to be going over my Week 16 NFL game picks and we're going to be breaking down each game. Before we get started, please drop a like and a sub. It really helps my channel grow. I really appreciate it. And with that said, I hope you enjoy the video and let's dive right into it. So something I forgot to mention earlier, I'll leave the timestamps down below in the description for each game pick, but this is going to be the big board for today. These are the matchups for Week 16, and let's start with the Vikings and the Saints Friday night matchup. So Vikings and Saints. The Vikings coming off a loss to the Bears last week, and the Saints obviously coming off a loss to Kansas City. And I mean, they were in that game. They only lost by a few points, but I think the Saints will win this one. They need to get back into momentum coming down the line towards the playoffs. Obviously, they'll probably be a big playoff team come time in the playoffs. I mean, they're going to be in the thick of things, definitely competing for the Super Bowl, hoping to make a Super Bowl run. And I think this game against the Vikings is a big test for them, right? They need to get back on track after dropping their last two games. They lost to the Eagles a few weeks ago, and then they lost to Kansas City. So this is a very important game for the Saints team to get back on track. And it's definitely a winnable game. The Vikings have had defensive problems all year, and the Saints are one of the better offenses in the NFL. And at the end of the day, I think the Saints will get the win in this one. So with that said, let's move back to the big board, and we're going to have our first Saturday matchup, Bucs and Lions. So Buccaneers at Lions. The Lions have been a mess all year, and I think the Bucs, coming off a solid win against the Falcons, they were down by a lot early on in the game, but they ended up coming back. That's a good momentum win for them. That's going to push them forward and give them that burst towards the playoffs and allow them to play some good football down the stretch. And I think this game against the Lions is going to be no different. I mean, the Lions have struggled, as I said, pretty much all season. And I think that the Bucs will pretty much take care of business here. I mean, they've got a high-powered offense, one of the better defenses in the NFL, and the Lions just have had injury issues all year. And at the end of the day, I just don't think the Lions will be able to match the firepower that the Bucs have in this one. So I'm going to have the Bucs taking this one away on Saturday. Now, though, let's go back to the big board where it's going to be the 49ers and the Cardinals. And this is a pretty important game for the Cardinals here. I mean, they've got to win to keep on pace to try and get that wild card spot, that last wild card spot in the NFC playoff picture. And I think it's going to be an important game. I mean, division rivals, obviously, anything could happen. The Cardinals obviously took this one in week one, but now stuff is different. I mean, the 49ers have had injury issues. It will be interesting to see if they get some of those injured players back during this game. But I think that, I mean, it's also a funny game, right? The 49ers have been playing their home games in Arizona, so that's also interesting. Now they're playing at Arizona as an away team, but I think the Arizona, I mean, they're coming off a pretty solid win against the Eagles last week. Definitely a shootout kind of game, but Kyler Murray looks back, DeAndre Hopkins looks back, and I think that's going to mean game over for the 49ers. So with that said, I'm going to have the Cardinals winning this one. Now, though, let's move on to the Dolphins and Raiders game, Saturday Night Football game. With huge playoff implications. So Dolphins at Raiders. This is a toss-up in my mind, but I'm going to have my Dolphins winning this one, and here's why. The Raiders have struggled stopping the run all year, and especially in the past few weeks. And the Dolphins last week rushed for 250 yards off a great Savon Ahmed performance. He had a touchdown as well as a big rushing performance. And Matt Breida also had over 80 yards rushing too. Both very efficient on the ground for the Dolphins. And that really carried the Dolphins last Sunday against the Patriots. As I said, the Raiders have been struggling with the run all season. And at the end of the day, on the opposite side of the ball, they've also been running the ball not great. I mean, last week against the Chargers, they just couldn't get it going. It will depend who's playing quarterback. I mean, there is some talk that Derek Carr might be able to work his way back from injury, but I think it's probably going to be Marcus Mariota on Saturday because at the end of the day, I mean, Mariota, great running quarterback, but the Dolphins showed that they could stop the running quarterback last week. Cam Newton was not as efficient and not as good as he was in week one against the Dolphins. So I think that also, I mean, even Josh Jacobs, they couldn't really get Josh Jacobs going last week. I mean, he was, I think, he had 20-something carries for 75 yards or something along those lines. I mean, he had a 20-yard run and a touchdown. So, I mean, if you take away that 20-yard run, I mean, he's at like 24, I think, carries for like 55 yards. He wasn't really efficient on the ground for this Raiders squad. So the Dolphins also have had some success stopping the run. Yes, they struggled a little bit with Sony Michel last week. He played pretty well. I think he had 10 carries for 74 yards. But overall, I think the Dolphins, I just like their defense in this one too. And if the Marcus Mariota Raiders, if Marcus Mariota is playing for the Raiders next week, I think the Dolphins should be able to take care of business here. I think it will be a close game and an exciting game with big playoff implications, but I mean, the Dolphins really need this win more than the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders at this point are pretty much out of the playoff picture. I mean, they're there mathematically, but they're going to need a lot of help, and it would start with winning this game. But the Dolphins, I think they're just going to want this win a little bit more. So with that said, we're going to move on to the big board here, and it's going to be Giants and Ravens. This is another important playoff matchup. Ravens really need a win to try and push towards the playoffs, and the Giants also need a win to get back into that playoff picture. The Giants losing to the Browns did not really help them last week, and now that the Ravens won their last week game, they're at 9-5, and they're in that thick and that hunt of that playoff picture. Currently, they're the 8th seed. So with that said, I mean, I think the Ravens are going to win this one. I mean, they've got a great run game, and although the Giants have one of the better run-stopping defenses in the NFL, I mean, this Ravens offense is just too high-powered, in my opinion. I mean, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, I mean, even Dez Bryant had a touchdown last week. That was pretty exciting to see and pretty exciting to watch. But I think the Ravens are just going to be too much to handle, especially if Daniel Jones isn't back. I think the Ravens, their defense is better too. I mean, it's just the Ravens are overall just a better team. So with that said, I'm going to give the Ravens the win in this one, especially at home too. Now let's go back to the big board where it's going to be Falcons and Chiefs. So the Falcons almost pulled off a very big win last week, but it's going to be the Chiefs in this one, in my opinion, that are going to be taking the win. Right now they've only lost one game on the season, and right now it doesn't look like they're going to stop. Yeah, they've had some close calls the last 2 weeks against the Dolphins and then against the Saints last week, but the Falcons, although they're a very high-powered offense, their defense is like butter, and Patrick Mahomes is going to cut through them very easily because at the end of the day, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is playing inspired football right now. And although Clyde Edwards-Helaire, has a little bit of an injury right now, I think he's a high ankle sprain. That might keep him out of this one. But their offense is just so high-powered with Kelsey, as well as Tyreek Hill and McCole Hart. It's just too much for this Falcons secondary, who is in need of a lot of help this offseason. So I think the Chiefs will pretty much breeze through this one in Week 16. Now, though, let's go to another important game. Panthers at Washington. This is a big game for Washington here, trying to push to the playoffs, and for that reason, I'm going to pick Washington winning this game. Hopefully, moves them to 7-8 on the year. Right now, they're at 6-8, and I'm not going to say that the Panthers are a bad team. I think the Panthers have a lot of upside in a few years. I think they've found some really solid players this offseason. I mean, their wide receiving core looks awesome. And when they get Christian McCaffrey back next year and Teddy Bridgewater another year in that offense and Joe Brady in that offense. And Joe Brady's done a fantastic job with that offense. I think that they'll be very solid. But, I mean, they're going to play arguably a top 5 defense in the NFL. I'd say, yeah, a top 5 defense in the NFL with an elite pass rushing group and very good secondary in Washington. And I think Washington, it's just about their offense. I mean, will they have Alex Smith? Will they have Dwayne Haskins next week? That's going to be what it's going to come down to for Washington on the offensive side of the football. Also Antonio Gibson, too. That'll be interesting if he can play. He was out last week and I think the week before because of that injury he had in the Pittsburgh game. But, I mean, Washington is playing some good football right now. I mean, they're a good team. They hang around in games, even against tough opponents. I mean, they only lost to the Seahawks by a few points. So I think Washington will win this one. I don't think it will be an easy game because the Panthers put up a lot of points. And I think Washington's defense will be able to hold them, and whoever's playing quarterback for Washington is going to need to find points. But I think Washington will win this game at home in Week 16. Now, though, let's move back to the big board where it's going to be Browns and Jets. So normally I'd say this is my easy pick of the week. I'll go with the Browns here, and yeah, I'm going to go with the Browns here. But I'm going to have to give it a little more time after the Jets won a very interesting game last Sunday against the Rams, where now it looks like they might not even get the first overall pick, so they don't even know how to tank at this point. But the Browns, I mean, they are playing really good football. Baker Mayfield has arguably been the best quarterback in the NFL in the past 3 games. He's got 10 touchdowns and an interception. And, I mean, he's just playing fantastic football, like 72% completion percentage. With that said, I mean, their run game too. Just overall, the Browns offense is going to be too much for that Jets defense, and that Browns defense, with guys like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, it's just going to be too much for a bad Jets offense. So overall, I think the Browns are going to easily win this game. Now let's go to the Bears and the Jags. Let's just take a look at the big board first, and here we go. So Bears-Jags, Mitch Trubisky is playing somewhat okay football at this point in his career. It's very interesting and very weird. But hey, you know what? It happens. But I'm going to give the Bears this one. David Montgomery also has been playing absolutely fantastically in the past few games. I think him and Mitch Trubisky, and even Allen Robinson too, are just going to carry this Bears team to a victory against Jacksonville. Also, the Bears defense is pretty solid. And against a Jacksonville offense that has been pretty much struggling all year, I think the Bears will pretty much easily win this game. And it's definitely an important game for them. Gives them some momentum and gives them some confidence too. But with that said, let's move back to the big board where it's going to be the Bengals and the Texans, which is going to be a very interesting game for the draft. The Bengals and the Texans are both currently in the top 5 of that draft order, or top 6 of that draft order, rather. I think the Texans are currently at 6. But with that said, I mean, this game, I mean, if the Texans lose or the Bengals lose, it'll definitely impact that draft and that top half of that draft. And remember that Houston Texans pick is now a Miami Dolphins pick. So it'd be very interesting if a potential playoff team got a top 5 pick in the draft. It's not impossible, right? That's happened before. But the Bengals, I think, we're just going to not have enough firepower against this Texans team that has Deshaun Watson, who is an elite quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he is. And what he's been able to do with barely any weapons is astonishing. Just give him some weapons, and I mean, this guy could be an MVP candidate. So with that said, I think the Texans are just going to win this game. I mean, they only lost to the Colts by a few points last week. Colts team, it's very good. And the Bengals are just, I mean, they're getting outplayed, and they've been outplayed all season. I mean, ever since losing Joe Burrow, it's been hard for them. So I think that's going to continue in this one with the Texans winning this game. Now let's go to the Colts and the Steelers. So Colts and Steelers here. Obviously, if you look at the record, the Steelers have the better record, but I think the Colts are going to win this game. I mean, the Colts coming off a solid win last week against Houston. I think they're just, I mean, defensively, right, both of these defenses are really, really good. And offensively, these offenses are both pretty solid too. But I think it's going to be a close game, a close, hard-fought game. But over recent weeks, the Steelers just, they haven't looked like the Steelers that we've seen earlier in the year. I mean, they haven't been playing to the level that we're accustomed to seeing. And I think that Bills game is a very good indication of what this game might look like. Both solid offenses, both solid defenses, and the Steelers. I don't think their record matches what they are. I mean, yeah, they've ganged up on bad teams, and the Colts are a team that has veteran leadership and solid players all around. So I think the Colts might get a sneaky win in this game. I mean, even at Heinz Field, I just like the Colts in this one. I just don't like how the Steelers have been playing over the past few weeks, and I mean, like the Steelers, they dropped games to the Bills. They lost one to Washington. I mean, they just haven't been containing and continuing that success that they had earlier in the year because they were ganging up on bad teams and bad football teams. And hey, that happens, and that's why they only have two losses on the season as of now. This is before the Bengals-Steelers game. But even then, I mean, even whatever happens in that Bengals and Steelers game, even if the Steelers win pretty solidly, I mean, they're going to be playing the Bengals. So I just like the Colts in this one. I have a good feeling about the Colts and Phillip Rivers and what they've been able to accomplish over the past few weeks and their current success. So with that said, I'm going to have the Colts winning this one. But this is definitely a Steelers possibility win. Like, don't get me wrong here. I just like the Colts in this one. Now, though, let's go back to the big board where it's going to be Broncos and Chargers. So Broncos and Chargers here. Two teams that are on the edge of not even in the playoff picture, rather. And this game pretty much doesn't really mean anything rather than the draft, really. So I think the Chargers will win this one. They've just got more firepower and more weaponry than this Broncos squad. I mean, Justin Herbert has played really well this season, had a very big win last week against the Raiders. And I mean, if they can get Keenan Allen back and healthy, Austin Eckler continuing to produce, Hunter Henry had a solid week last week. I just think this Broncos defense, yeah, they've been playing solidly over the past few weeks, but this Chargers offense has been really solid all year. And although the Chargers defense is crazy, I mean, it's a real problem. I just don't think this Broncos offense is going to put up enough points to really compete with a Chargers offense that has been playing some good football over the past few weeks. So with that said, I think the Chargers offense will carry them to a victory in this one. Now let's go to Eagles and Cowboys. So these are two teams that are still technically in the playoff picture. It's technically. That doesn't mean they'll be in the playoff picture come time in a week or so, but this is going to be an important game. Whoever wins this game knocks the other team out of playoff contention. And although the Cowboys did have a solid win last week against the 49ers, I'm going to have the Eagles taking this one, even though they lost last week. Jalen Hurts, 4 touchdowns, 400 yards. Are you kidding me? I mean, this guy looks like an absolute weapon. And I remember saying it back in, I think, March or April of last year. I was like, this guy is being slept on. I mean, he is. And you guys might not believe me, but go watch my mock drafts from the beginning of last year, and you'll see that's what I was saying. I mean, like, this guy should have been a first-round pick. He had first-round talent. He was a Heisman potential player. And he just reminds me of a great football player. He honestly reminds me of a toned-back version of Kyler Murray. I mean, in 2 years, he might be Kyler Murray. Who knows? And that's going to definitely mess with the whole Wentz situation there in Philadelphia, too. But, I mean, Jalen Hurts is playing some fantastic football right now. And for those reasons, and plus a very good defense in the Eagles, who are being underrated defensively this season, I mean, their front four and their ability to get push and pass rush from guys like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham has been fantastic to watch on the defense side of the football. And although the Andy Dalton and the Cowboys, they've been able to find some success in the past few weeks. I just like what Jalen Hurts is able to have done in the past few weeks, and I like what he's been able to achieve and the momentum he's been able to push for this Eagles squad. So with that said, I think the Eagles will win this game. So now let's go to the Rams and the Seahawks, and normally this would be a pretty close toss-up game for me. I'd be like, man, Rams, Seahawks, they're playing in Seattle. I'll go with the Seahawks in this one. But I think I'm going to have to go with the Seahawks in this one anyway, because the Rams lost to the Jets last week in a pretty disgusting game. That's a tough loss for the Rams. But I think Seahawks coming off a win against a good defense in Washington. They've got some confidence, got some momentum, and I think they'll just be able to beat this Rams team. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. But, I mean, the Rams defense did not look good last week against a Jets offense that's been the worst in the NFL all season. So with that said, I think the Seahawks will win this one. Not easily. I think the Rams will have a bounce-back game, but it's going to be competitive, but the Seahawks should win this one. Now, though, let's go to one of my favorite games for this Week 16 slate, where it's the Titans and the Packers. And for me, this is a real toss-up. The Packers have been better over the past few weeks in stopping the run, but they have been one of the worst run-stopping teams in the NFL this season, or at times in the season. So that does worry me, especially when the Titans have been one of the best run-heavy offenses in the NFL, obviously with Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill has been playing well too. But the Packers have been better the past few weeks on the defense side of the football, and for that reason, I think they're going to be able to stop the Titans to probably 24, 25-ish, somewhere in that area points. But the Packers offense against the Titans defense is why I'm having the Packers going to win this game. I mean, Aaron Rodgers this season is an MVP candidate. He's been playing at a high level with Devontae Adams and Marcus Valdes-Scantling, and his ability to spread the ball around to all different guys and be really productive against a Titans defense that has been bottom 10 in some of the major stats and the major categories so far this year. So for that reason, I do like Derrick Henry and I do like Ryan Tannehill, and I think this game will be very exciting, but I think the Packers will just be able to put up more points than this Tennessee offense. So with that said, I'm going to have the Packers win this one, and let's go to the final game, where it's going to be the Bills and the Patriots. So Bills and Patriots, obviously earlier this year, the Patriots were very close to beating the Bills. Cam Newton ended up having a fumble, and that ended up losing the Patriots that game. But I think, Week 16, important game. Bills need to keep trying to get a better playoff seed, and I think they're going to be able to do that against a Patriots team that just didn't look like they had any fight last week in Miami. Yeah, their defense ended up playing pretty well in that first half, and even their offense, I mean, it looked good at times, but Cam Newton just doesn't look like Cam Newton from a few years ago. And for those reasons, I mean, the Bills' defense has been solid. I mean, they played a very good game this week as well as last week. I mean, this Bills team is a solid football team. Like, you can't deny that. They're playing good football overall. And at the end of the day, like, this Bills team is going to be a serious playoff contender. They're one of the few teams that I think has the ability to stay with the Chiefs in a game. Yeah, they lost to the Chiefs earlier this season. But I think that they have the firepower. I mean, Josh Allen's playing fantastically. Stephon Diggs is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL this year. So overall, this Bills team is legit. Like, they are legit, and I think they're going to take care of business, even away from home against the Patriots. So with that said, that's going to end the video. Those are my picks. I have the Saints, Bucks, Cardinals, Dolphins, Ravens, Chiefs, Washington, Browns, the Bears, the Texans, the Colts, the Chargers, the Eagles, the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Bills all winning. And I think this is going to be a very important week. Obviously, the playoff implications in the AFC playoff picture and the NFC playoff picture. But with that said, that's going to end the video today. Did you agree with my picks? Why or why not? Leave your comments in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please drop a like and a sub. That would help my channel grow, and I'd really appreciate it. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.